Boulevard in Tampa, offering hands-on learning sessions in their wellness kitchen, where design meets well-being. Learn more and see the schedule at adelaide.com.
A lot's changed since Jane Castor was sworn in as Tampa's mayor 7 years ago. The city weathered a pandemic. More than 150 people moved to this area every day, many to Tampa. There's an updated bridge connecting across the bay, and by the time Castor finishes her second term, the Tampa Bay Rays could ink a deal to build a stadium here. I'm Matthew Petty, and coming up on Florida Matters Live and Local, Mayor Castor joins us to talk about the issues, and you can join the conversation. What questions do you have for the Mayor? Call 813-755-6562 or email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Then, the brutal cold snap punished plenty of plants in recent days. How's your garden looking? We'll get some tips on how to nurse your suffering fruit trees and frozen foliage, and a dive into Tampa Bay's distant past. Find out who called Tampa home way back in the 1500s. All this and your calls and emails coming up after these headlines.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. The Trump administration says hundreds of federal immigration agents deployed to Minnesota will begin leaving today. Border Czar Tom Homan says the move is part of a broader shift in enforcement strategy.
Given this increase in unprecedented collaboration, and as a result of the need for less law enforcement officers to do this work in a safer environment, I have announced effective immediately we will draw down 700 people effective today.
Homan was sent to Minneapolis last week to oversee the immigration crackdown launched after 2 U.S. citizens were shot dead by ICE agents last month. A U.S. official tells NPR that active-duty troops who had been on standby to deploy to Minnesota have now been taken off alert. 2 top-ranking Democrats are blasting the White House for playing favorites with tariffs. They say the Trump administration is offering trade relief to big companies that cozy up to the president. NPR's Maria Aspen obtained an advance copy of their letter that's now being made public.
U.S. Senators Ron Wyden and Chris Van Hollen say President Trump's trade policy, quote, has opened the door to corruption and economic harm. Their letter to the Trump administration raises concerns that the White House is giving certain companies and industries a break on tariffs, if and only if they're politically well connected. The letter comes at a time when President Trump is visibly favoring some companies and investors, leading some political and business leaders to warn that the United States is tipping into crony capitalism. The White House has dismissed claims of crony capitalism and defended its tariffs. Maria Aspen, NPR News, New York.
Ukraine is importing record volumes of electricity as Russia continues to target its energy infrastructure amid frigid winter weather. NPR's Eleanor Beardsley reports 4 years of strikes are taking a toll on the country's power grid.
Ukraine imported 40% more electricity this January than a year ago, say analysts. Since late December, Russia has carried out multiple waves of missile and drone strikes targeting power generation and transmission facilities across Ukraine. A strike on a thermal plant in Kyiv Tuesday plunged 1,000 apartment buildings into frigid darkness, says the city's mayor. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, on a visit to Kyiv, spoke amidst its steaming, mangled wreckage.
This plant was hit last night by 5 Russian missiles without any military aids. It's only to create chaos and fear in ordinary citizens living in Ukraine.
But, he said, Ukrainians will not be broken, and NATO and Europe will not abandon them. Eleanor Beardsley, NPR News, Kyiv.
On Wall Street, the Dow was up 292 points. This is NPR.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher's dedicated team of specialists provide resources on investing, retirement income, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
You're listening to WUSF 89.7. I'm Craig Kopp. Governor Ron DeSantis and baseball's commissioners said Tuesday they support a new stadium for the Tampa Bay Rays, but there were few details about who will pay to build it on Hillsborough College's Dale Mabry campus. DeSantis says he won't use taxpayer money, but he is willing to help build roads and other infrastructure, and there is money to relocate the buildings at the state-owned campus. Hillsborough County Commissioner Ken Hagan has been leading the board's discussions with the Rays for years now. He was upbeat about the team committing to pay at least half of the cost of the stadium and having the rest of the development privately financed.
It's encouraging, having been engaged in this process over the last 16 years with the previous ownership group. They would never even come to the table with that as a starting point. And the fact that they are is encouraging moving forward.
Hagan says the commission will hold its first meeting on the project today. The Tampa Sports Authority met Tuesday after the governor's visit. Members were concerned about traffic and parking if a new stadium for the Rays is built on the Dale Mabry campus of Hillsborough College. Several board members said having 81 home games next to Raymond James Stadium could be a problem in an area that already has failing grades for traffic. The authority, which manages the stadium, leases a parking lot across from Hillsborough College. That would likely be lost during construction of a new stadium there. Board members also said that could interfere with concerts and games that are booked years in advance, and they say feeder roads leading to the sports complex would have to be widened. St. Petersburg is moving forward with the idea of replacing Duke Energy. The city wants to study whether it should create its own municipal utility. A request for proposals from the city says customers have raised concerns over rising electric bills, along with Duke's reliability and transparency. The study could also determine whether the city could create a municipal utility that is powered by 100% renewable energy. I'm Craig Kopp, WUSF 89.7 News.
Arts, music, culture, all in one place. Explore it all at artsaccessflorida.org. That's artsaccessflorida.org.
Funding for WUSF comes from listeners like you, and also Sarasota Memorial Hospital, the only hospital in Florida to consistently earn a 5-star rating from the U.S. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services since 2016. You can learn more at smh.com.
This is Florida Matters, live and local, sponsored by Badawi Law, and we're broadcasting from the doctors Lorraine Rubis and Neil Frankel studio at WSF in Tampa. I'm Matthew Petty. Well, Tampa Mayor Jane Castor has just over 1 year left as the city's leader, and lots has changed since she first took office in 2019. The pandemic, Tampa Bay's booming population, the power struggle between state and local government leaders. We're going to ask the Mayor about all of this, and we'll take your calls and emails. If you've got questions for Mayor Jane Castor, you can call 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562, or email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Mayor Castor, thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure, Matthew.
So we've got a lot of topics to get through today, but let's start with sports. Now, the prospect of the Tampa Bay Rays moving across the bay to Hillsborough County has gone from rumor to maybe reality, but there is a pretty enormous price tag. Tampa Sports Authority CEO Eric Hart told the Tampa Bay Times it could cost $2.3 billion to build this new stadium. The Rays owners say they'll cover half the cost of the stadium, but how much could the city of Tampa be on the hook for?
Well, their plan, the Rays' plan, is to pay for half of the stadium and have the county city pay for the other half. And so, that we're still figuring out what the total cost would be. It did balloon, almost double the cost for the stadium. So that clearly is an issue.
Yeah.
But
does that kind of give you a bit of heartburn thinking about those numbers?
Well, sure it does. And it should. It should give everyone, some concern. It's not that it's unmanageable, but we have to figure out where that funding is going to come from. And I know that the governor has said that, he would definitely support the Rays building a stadium with the mixed use around it, but that taxpayer dollars wouldn't go towards a stadium. Well, that's the same thing that I have said all along. But we are working along with Hillsborough County and the Tampa Sports Authority to figure out how we can make the Rays Tampa Bay Rays staying in Tampa and specifically right there on that site, how we can make that a reality.
So if I'm hearing you right, you're saying if taxpayers will have to chip in something, but you're saying that wouldn't go towards the stadium, that would be the development around the stadium?
That's my goal,
Mm-hmm.
but we're still in those conversations.
Yeah.
But we clearly have to be, look out for the taxpayers' dollars and be very cognizant of how they are spent. I also believe that our city, our region, is too big of a region to lose a major sporting franchise. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a line of demarcation where, we can only spend so much for a privately owned endeavor.
2.5 years ago, the Rays were telling St. Petersburg they were there to stay. That was the banner they had, or here to stay, I should say. I mean, are you confident this new ownership group will stick to whatever plan is settled on?
I'm confident. They are just a good bunch of individuals, and they have been very upfront, very transparent in all of the talks that we have had, and just looking at how we can craft an arrangement that is advantageous for everybody involved.
Let me switch to another issue, if I could, safety, and particularly safety in Ybor City. Now, on Monday, residents and city officials discussed pedestrian safety. This is obviously after that car crash back in November into a popular bar, killing 4 people. People obviously also wanted to talk about the car chase that preceded the crash, and there has been some support for closing Ybor streets to car traffic weekends. Others don't support that. Where do you stand on that issue?
Definitely on keeping 7th Avenue open. I actually worked that area as a supervisor, was my first assignment as a sergeant back in the mid to late 90s. And we have gone back and forth with leaving it open, closing, opening back up. And there are advantages to both, no doubt. But by keeping that 7th Avenue open to vehicle traffic, it really minimizes so many problems that arose while we during the times that we closed 7th Avenue. So we are going to keep 7th Avenue open, but we're also going to provide as much safety and security in that particular area that we can't ward off everything. If someone decides to use a car as a weapon, it's very difficult to stop that. We're going to do everything that we can to continue to make Ybor City an incredibly safe area of the city of Tampa.
If you're just joining us on Florida Matters Live and Local, we're talking with Tampa Mayor Jane Castor. Heading into the final year of her second and final term in 2027, Tampa will elect a new mayor. If you've got some questions for the mayor, want to join the conversation, give us a call, 813-755-6562, or email floridamatters@wusf.org. So I wanted to just kind of go back to that Ybor City thing. Obviously, a lot of people had questions for the Florida Highway Patrol pursuit. Now, you served, as you mentioned, for years as a police officer, as the city's police chief as well. Does FHP need to look into their pursuit protocols?
That's up to FHP. I wouldn't dictate what their pursuit policy includes, but I can say that the Tampa Police Department's pursuit policy is very restrictive, and we do everything that we can to avoid pursuits, and that includes using our air service, using undercover vehicles to block cars in, everything that we can do to avoid pursuits. Any identifying information that we could have that comes from a tag or those types of pieces of information and evidence that we could later locate the suspects. But it's always, the determination is always to pursue or not to pursue is when the goal or the outcome is outweighed by the danger to the community, then they are called off.
Yeah, there's only a few seconds to make those decisions, though, right? So it can be quite tricky. On the subject of safety and public safety, I mean, all eyes have been on Minnesota in recent weeks with a federal crackdown on immigration. the death of 2 Americans at the hands of federal immigration agents. If immigration enforcement activity ramps up in Tampa, what will you do to keep Tampa residents safe?
Well, I don't foresee that occurring in Minneapolis right now. My understanding is that there are 5 times the number of ICE officers as they have police officers on the street in Minneapolis. And so, that's an occupation. And so that's something that we will do everything in my power in working with the state and the federal government to avoid even playing a part in something like that. And if you are looking at immigration from the standpoint of individuals that are committing crimes in our community, then there are ways that you can identify and apprehend those individuals without basically throwing a very wide and deep net and pulling everyone up in that net. The way that it's being approached right now, I think it has no advantage for anyone, Americans, immigrants, legal or otherwise.
What's your message, though, to immigrants who make their home here in Tampa?
My message is that our community is a very welcoming and collaborative community. We understand we are a minority majority. The largest minority population are Latinos and Hispanics in our community. They play a very big part in our workforce, and we depend on those individuals. We depend on the collaboration. Clearly, no American is in support of individuals that are in our country committing crime, whether an immigrant or not. So the focus on those individuals, I have no issue with. Also, switching to the police department hat, police officers' effectiveness comes, or power, I guess I should say, comes from the trust of the community. If you don't have that trust out in your community, among your residents, among your visitors, then the police department are going to be powerless to keep the community safe.
Is that what you're seeing? Is that kind of your read on what's happening up in, or has been happening up in
yes,
Minneapolis?
There's no relationship at all between the ICE officers or agents that are in Minneapolis and the Minneapolis community, where the police officers from Minneapolis, they spend the majority of their time building those relationships so they can prevent crime, that people aren't afraid to call to ask for assistance, or when they're victimized. That's how you build successful and safe cities.
It sounds like we are going to have to go to a break in a moment, Mayor Castor, but it does sound like your concern is like not getting to what you called an occupation, like what you've seen in Minneapolis, but that's going to take some effort behind the scenes, presumably.
Without a doubt. And, I'll continue to do all that I can to ensure that we never see that type of activity in the Tampa Bay region.
If you're just joining us on Florida Matters Live and Local, we are talking with Tampa Mayor Jane Castor. You can join the conversation. Give us a call, 813-755-6560. You can email floridamatters@wusf.org. Much more to get to. We're going to talk about transportation, other issues as well in a moment. Do stay with us on Florida Matters Live and Local. Much more to come. And please stand by, Mayor Castor. We'll get back to the conversation in a moment.
WUSF depends on contributions from people like you. And Seitenbacher, with a new web shop, healthy muesli, cold-pressed oils, and vegetable broth mix delivered to your door from right here in Tampa Bay. Details at Seitenbacher.com. Seitenbacher. Seitenbacher. Sarasota Opera presents its 2026 Winter Opera Festival featuring Puccini's La Bohème, Floyd's Susanna, and more. These performances run February 14th through March 29th. Tickets at sarasotaopera.org.
Have you thought about supporting WUSF beyond an annual gift? Your charitable gift annuity supports WUSF, means steady income for life and potential tax advantages. It's a smart way to give back and reap the benefits. Call Scott Nolan at 800-741-9090 or visit WUSF.org/support.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. We're talking with Tampa Mayor Jane Castor, heading into the final year of her second and last term. If you've got questions for the mayor, want to join the conversation, give us a call, 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562, or email floridamatters@wusf.org. I want to talk transportation for a moment, if I could. Now, you took office, Mayor Castor, in May 2019. Yes, less than a year later, the world shut down with COVID-19. But through all of that upheaval and turmoil, people kept coming to Florida. In fact, they came in even more droves, if you could say that. Since 2020, Tampa Bay has welcomed nearly 500,000 new residents. And of course, all these new people means more people on the roads. In an interview with Florida Politics recently, you called transportation Tampa's Achilles heel. Why?
Well, it is. And if you look at development anywhere across our nation, the two elements that lag behind are the construction of schools and transportation. There's just not a lot of money for transportation solutions. Mm-hmm. And again, they aren't really supported until traffic becomes a problem. And we've seen that in the Tampa Bay region.
And by that time, it's too late, right? You've got to kind of do it a long time in advance.
Without a doubt. And we've seen that too. The Veterans Expressway, when that was first built, they received a great deal of criticism because it was sparsely populated out in that area and relatively few cars were seen on the Veterans. And now they can't expand it fast enough. So, that is an issue with transportation. With the All for Transportation, that really was going to be the answer to our funding issues with some transportation solutions. And we had a number of projects lined up for that. So losing the All for Transportation was really a blow to the Hillsborough County and the cities within Hillsborough County. But, once we got back up on our feet, the problem's not going to go away. So we continue to look for solutions. And we were able to apply for Build America grants in the form of Regional Infrastructure Accelerator funding, RIA funding. And we've received in 2 grants about $4 million. And the RIA program looks at regional transportation. So we have Pinellas County, Hillsborough County, and Pasco County, all the cities within there that can participate in this program. We hired a consultant, and the consultant will look at the projects for viability. They will vet them, but they won't be in a descending order. Any city can do a project that they want to do, any county can, and then we can look at regional solutions as well. And they also help with the funding structure, whether you want that to be a public-private opportunity. You can avail yourselves to low-interest, long-term government loans to build those solutions. And then also, if it's along a transit-oriented area, developers can also avail themselves to those low-interest, long-term federal loans to provide more density along those transit byways. So we are looking in the city of Tampa at using that funding, that program for the extension of our streetcar, and then also looking at a solution that comes out of the airport down the interstate to downtown Tampa, where it would connect with our streetcar and with the Bright Line that's coming in the future, and then some other bus rapid transit solutions that will go out north of the city.
If I could just go back to Ybor City for a moment, we did get a call from a listener. Didn't want to go on air, but had this question for you, Mayor. Frank in Palm Harbor said, went to Ybor when streets were closed 30 years ago. It was a good time. Now wondering why open to traffic is better.
Mm-hmm. Well, open to traffic stops a lot of the incidents that occur when individuals gather in the street. One of the issues that we found, the biggest problem, was that it was quite an attraction for young people that weren't able to get into the bars, and they came down, congregated in that area. We had a lot of fights, and we had some violent incidents that occurred, some shootings as a result of having those streets closed and really the density of individuals congregating out in the street.
So you're saying having the roads open kind of gets people in and out quicker?
It gets people in and out quicker. There's less room for individuals to congregate. You got to keep moving up and down the sidewalk. If you come to Ybor and you have a destination of a restaurant or a bar or someplace else, you go into that. What happened with the street closures was that young people that weren't able to, they didn't want to patronize any of the businesses down there. They just wanted to come and hang out.
Yeah.
And that ended up, with a lot of unintended consequences. In addition, we're unable to get our public safety vehicles down into that area if the street is open.
Right. Got an email here from Michael in Tampa who writes, how do you make sure HC, that's Hillsborough College students pursuing an education at the Dale Mabry campus, are protected from the disruption or tearing down their campus? I mean, is that something you're thinking about, Mayor Castor, as you contemplate this new stadium deal?
Yeah, of course. We have to consider the young people that are going to Hillsborough College. And in many instances, we have young people that are gainfully employed and they're attending Hillsborough College, in a tight schedule, getting in and out so that they can get those degrees that will assist them in getting better paying jobs. So very concerned about how we're going to get students in and out and to make sure that it's as disruptive as possible. And everything that I have seen in the planning up to this point is that the RAISE organization and Hillsborough College are keenly focused on the student population and how they can provide a brand new facility for those students and do it in the least disruptive way possible.
We've got about a minute left here, but I just wanted to read this email from Greg in St. Pete and get your take on it, Mayor. Greg writes, I understand that all county police in Florida, largely due to an order from the governor, require local police to fully collaborate with ICE and Border Control agents. I understand Minneapolis police have not fully collaborated, making ICE actions a bit less effective. Is there a way local police can respond only to local orders from mayors, and ignore orders from ICE/DHS?
Yes, the agreements that were signed, basically every mayor in the state had to sign that or we weren't going to receive any grant funding. To date, our police department has not received the training, so we have not been engaged with ICE up to this point. And one of the things that I want to put the listeners at ease, we have always had MOUs, memorandums of understanding, with all federal agencies, with the FBI, Secret Service, DEA, ICE, and we have collaborated on investigations. When I worked in family violence, sex crimes, when I worked in narcotics, we worked closely with ICE agents, especially when the investigations took you outside of the country. So it's not something that is unheard of, but just the way that it's being utilized today has caused a number of problems across our nation.
Jane Castor, Mayor of Tampa, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Matthew. Always a pleasure.
Up next, if you weren't able to cover your plants up over the last week, your yard probably looks a little bit sad. We'll have some tips on how to revive those plants coming up next on Florida Matters, live and local. Stay tuned.
I'm Ricardo Cuomo, and I'm a WUSF Zimmerman School Radio News intern. At WUSF, I found an incredible group of people who supported me and taught me a lot throughout my time here. Everything I know about the radio industry, I owe it to them, and all the amazing opportunities I've had as an intern. With your help, future journalists like me can get the opportunities we need to grow in our careers.
Support for WUSF comes from listeners like you and from Badawi Law, offering legal services in personal injury, immigration, and auto accidents with offices in Tampa, Florida. Office information and practice details at badawilaw.com or learn more on Instagram at Badawi Law. WUSF invites you to the 2026 Tampa Bay Collard Green Festival. Enjoy the Collard Green Cook-Off and giveaways, wellness fun, and award-winning chef Lakeisha Harris. Saturday, February 14th, 9 to 4 in St. Pete, tbcgf.org.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty. Well, the frigid wave in Florida continues. We're all trying to stay bundled up, even our plants.
And turning now to the next weather alert. Tonight, cold weather moving our way, and it could scar and perhaps ruin plants in your garden.
After those freeze warnings in Tampa Bay tonight, local strawberry farmers now racing to protect their crops right in the prime of the season.
Cover your ears and cover your plants. This weekend's freeze could pose major problems for your gardens, your yards, and really everything in between.
All right, so a little bit of a sense of what we're getting over the last few days, and the unrelenting cold in the Sunshine State does mean more gardeners, landscapers, and green thumbs making sure beautiful plants not only survive but thrive. It has been harder than in years before. Crops like blueberries and strawberries and their distribution chains have been frozen, and thousands of jobs are affected or lost. So, how are you protecting your plants during this cold snap? What tips do you have for fellow listeners? What questions have you got? You can tell us by calling 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. You can also email us at floridamatters@wusf.org. Here to help us care for our plants during and after the freeze is Dr. Craig Hegel. He's the lead plant curator for USF's Botanical Gardens. Thanks for joining us, Craig.
Glad to be here.
Now, it seems historic is being used to describe this duration of cold we've had. Is it harder for folks to keep their plants warm this time around?
You know, that's a good question. I remember I moved here in 85 from Wisconsin originally, and that's cold.
Yeah.
2 years after that, it got down to 19 in Largo 3 nights in a row. Ooh. That was cold. And that killed a lot of plants that people had in their landscape. It really hasn't done that since then. And I think the number of days we've had where it's been hovering around freezing, depending on where you live, or just below by whatever, that's been a long stretch. So it's had an impact for sure.
Yeah, and when it stays cold for longer, it's harder to recover, right? Because the ground sort of cools down slowly and then warms it back up slowly. So if you got night after night of sub-freezing temperatures, that's going to have a lasting impact. Absolutely. The length of time it's below freezing, along with the number of nights in a row that it's and our highs were not very high. Yeah. Everybody knows that. And so things didn't warm up like they might have in other times. So it's been cold. What is something that people can do immediately to protect their plants, or is it too late now? Well, the main thing people need to do is relax. Okay. Because there's really nothing you can do for your plants at this point in time. It's already been done to them. You don't want to get crazy with your pruning shears. It's like, it's so hard to look at your plant that's all shriveled up, you know. And at the Botanical Garden, every day that I come to work, there's a few things that look worse than they did. The first night, or the first morning I came back after that first night, things looked pretty good. It was like, we didn't have much impact. And then every day since, it's looked worse. And so you just grieve for the way your plant looks, and you don't want to see it like that. So you want to prune it back maybe, but don't do that because you just want to let things settle in, let Florida become Florida again, let them leaf out wherever they're not frozen. And most of the time, the larger branches and the trunks, even on a really sensitive plant, aren't dead. And so give it some time, prune it in another month or so when we're back to the
time where it's not likely to be a frozen night, because we may get more freezes, and cutting them back just exposes that part of the plant to another freezing event. So anyhow, that's my advice.
So you got to be a bit patient.
Yes, and I'm not a very patient person, but if I can do it, the rest of the folks out there can do it too.
If you're just joining us on Florida Matters, we're talking with Dr. Craig Hegel. He's the lead plant curator for USF's Botanical Gardens. If you've got calls, maybe some questions about plants in your yard that are looking a little bit sad, a little bit worse for wear over the last few days, you can give us a call, 813-755-6562. You can also email floridamatters@wusf.org. Craig, you've got some plant samples here down on the ground. Do you want to sort of bring them up so we can see them on camera?
Yeah, I'll be happy to do that.
All right. What are we looking at?
Well, you're looking at cold damage, obviously. And some of this stuff is probably dead, but let me grab this one out of the bucket. Ooh. You know, when you look at this is a cashew. We have a really nice cashew at the garden.
Like the cashew nut?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And it's sensitive. And if it was a tiny little seedling, it probably would freeze to death, but it's not. It's been in the ground for a number of years. Mm-hmm. But first day looked great. You can see there's still a little bit of green color, like it's trying to be alive, but everything is ghosting out, so to speak, on this.
Is that a term of art? That's what you call it?
I just made that up.
That's nice.
But you look at it from a distance, and it's this light gray, and you're going, oh, my goodness. Mm-hmm. That's not good. But, you know, when you see a plant with leaves that are all shriveled up like this and some of the other ones, the main thing is if I look at this stem when I trimmed it off, it was green here. And so unless it turns brown in another couple of days, this branch is still alive.
Can you hold it up for the camera just so people can kind of see the end of it? This is the camera right here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
So, you know, in a plant like this, when I pick off a leaf and it's green down here.
Yeah. Plus, you put some effort into that, so clearly that's a good sign, right?
It's a great sign. And if the leaves, and I'm expecting it will on this and some of the other plants that are in this bucket with me, fall off on their own in the next few days to week, that's a wonderful thing, because when the branch is alive and the leaves die, they fall off. If it stays on the plant, turns brown and ugly, and I can't pull it off, or when I finally do and it's not green underneath there, that means that part of the branch is dead. But right now, we can't really tell that. You know, we have to give it time.
Yeah. We are talking with Craig Hegel. He is the plant curator at USF's Botanical Gardens about keeping the flora in Florida warm in this cold weather. If you've got some questions for Craig about keeping your plants alive, or maybe nourishing them, nursing them back to life after the cold snap, give us a call, 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. You can also email floridamatters@wusf.org. So I was kind of interested to hear you say, Craig, that you're kind of like in the same boat, same bucket with the rest of us when it comes to some of the impacts of this. You walk into the Botanical Gardens after one of these freezes, and you're just kind of looking at things and saying, well, looks okay, or it doesn't. There's nothing particular that you can do, you know, as a plant curator, that may be some inside knowledge that other folks may not have that would be useful.
Well, it is true that, you know, at the Botanical Gardens, people expect to come there and see plants that are interesting, pretty, whatever. And some of those are subtropicals, and not all of them are from this part of the world or this type of climate. And so we're always at a risk of some of the things we plant that are going to suffer. And that's just the way it is. You know, my feeling is that if I have a plant in the garden that I have to protect, I can't go to sleep at night because I'm afraid it's going to die. And it's too small to have it in a pot, and it shouldn't be there, you know. Sometimes we try to force plants, and, you know, I'll go back to my story of 87, when it got really, really cold, and it killed every African tulip tree in the entire world. It killed tons of citrus in that part of the world. They moved citrus south because, oh my gosh, it's not really the place to be growing this stuff. And then people planted it again after a year or two because they got complacent, and it was warm, and it's been warm pretty much since. And their African tulip tree, for example, is probably done pretty well, but it's maybe dead now or it may recover. It just depends on where it was, how cold it got in that spot, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. What about covering plants? Because, I drive around my neighborhood and I see all kinds of duvets and plastic sheets and bed sheets and stuff covering up people's plants. What should people use, and what are some of the funniest things you've seen people using to keep their plants toasty?
Well, we want to keep our plants warm, but if I put a blanket around myself or my loved one, my body heat's going to keep me warmer. But plants aren't putting out body heat; they're just plants. So if I wrap them up in a blanket, it's not going to keep them warmer. It's going to protect them from the wind chill.
Okay.
And so there might be some value, but if that blanket or something is tight against the plant, it's not going to help it nearly as much as if there's a way to trap warmer air around it. So being able to put some kind of tenting around it where the warmth from the soil is going to maybe keep it a little warmer. It's the trunk that's the most important part of that plant coming up out of the ground. So if I can mulch really high up along the trunk, I may keep that part of it alive even if the top dies. Those kinds of things can help.
Yeah.
Putting heaters around it could help, but story from work.
Yeah.
One of my coworkers has several mangoes, and he put heaters around each of his mangoes, and they look worse than the mangoes at the garden that I didn't protect at all.
Oh, dear. Let me get a call in here if I could. We've got Shannon on the line. Shannon, go for it. You're on the air.
Hello. I have a bride plant. It's about 4 feet tall, and it was extremely healthy, and slowly it's lost its leaves during this cold season, but it's lost everything now, and he looks brown. So what are the odds of maybe him coming back?
Oh, good question. What do you think about that?
That's a good question. But again, the patience part of it plays into this because, first of all, if you go near the ground, the part of the stem that's within a foot or so off the ground, and you take your fingernail and you scrape that bark just a little bit, it should be green. And if it is, then there's a super high probability that is alive and it will flush out with leaves, etc., once it starts warming up again. So don't cut it back until you know what part of it's dead. If it's brown, then that's dead. But that doesn't mean that the root system is dead or the part right beneath the soil is dead. So you still want to have some patience and give it some time to see if it doesn't green up again. I suspect it will.
Shannon, I hope you got some of that, but some good advice there from Dr. Hegel. Let me go to David, if I could. David is, I think, in Palm Harbor, if I got that right. But David, you're on the air at any rate.
If I'm the right David, I'm in Newport.
Newport. My apologies. Go for it.
That's okay. Sir, my question is this. Firebush, we just had them pruned. I've got several of them around my place for the butterflies and the hummingbirds and stuff. They love them. But what's the best way to know what's the time to actually prune those things back a little bit?
That's a good question too. I've been involved with the native plant movement for all the time I've lived in Florida, and before that when I lived in other states. And firebush is a great hummingbird wildlife plant. The problem is that it's extremely cold sensitive, and it will freeze to the ground at 31 degrees and probably not come back, but it will come up from the ground. It always does. I know people in Tallahassee that have that plant, and it comes back and it freezes every year. It's just difficult as a hummingbird plant because in the spring it's still starting to come up out of the ground one more time, and the hummingbirds need the nectar. So I always add things like coral honeysuckle to my landscape. And I have a firebush too, and I bet it's crispy. All the ones at the Botanical Garden are crisped up completely right now.
One final question, though. Okay, I had a fellow, a professional, come in and do the pruning on them, and that was before this cold snap, the bad cold snap. And they seem to have fared pretty well. I'm waiting to see what survives here, but is it a decent time to throw down a little bit of all-purpose fertilizer and water it in?
Watering plants, that's a good question. Watering plants right now that have suffered some damage is a good thing. I wouldn't do any more pruning on it, and I would wait to see what happens, because my guess is if it got below 32 where you are, you're going to still see frost freeze damage on your plant over the next week, but it's not going to kill it.
All right, so it sounds like some watering is good. Patience seems to be the elixir here that we're looking for.
And no fertilizer. I mean, don't try to make your plants grow during the winter time. Leave them alone.
Right.
And wait until spring when they start to put out new growth. That's the time to fertilize.
Well, Dr. Craig Hegel, lead plant curator at USF's Botanical Gardens, thank you so much for your insights. Really appreciate it.
Well, it was fun being here, and good luck to everybody with your plants.
Indeed. Up next, a new exhibit called Tampa Bay Timeline is now at the Tampa Bay History Center. We'll take a look at the timeline of West Central Florida history that spans all the way back to the indigenous communities. It's coming up in a few moments. Stay with us on Florida Matters Live and Local. More to come in a moment.
I'm Scott Tong. The invention of the bicycle let humans go farther, faster, but it took some practice. Is artificial intelligence, in a way, the next important tool?
I believe that the bicycle for the mind has actually arrived. But we actually have to take the time and invest in the bicycle for the mind and invest in the learning.
Next time, here and now.
Join us this afternoon from 1 to 3 on WUSF 89.7.
Hey, this is Warren with WUSFjazz.org. NPR Music is looking for the next great undiscovered musician to play the Tiny Desk. Could it be you? Submit your song to the 11th annual Tiny Desk contest from January 13th to February 9th at npr.org/Tiny Desk Contest. And make sure you listen to Tiny Desk Radio Friday nights at 9 and Saturday nights at 8 on WUSF 89.7, your spot for local.
Experience the Beacon Awards. The Climate Adaptation Center's 2026 Gala Luncheon honors leaders securing Florida's future through climate resilience. March 11th at Michael's on East. Tickets at theclimateadaptationcenter.org.
WUSF programs are powered by support from community businesses like Suncoast Credit Union. Learn how your business can support WUSF by calling Kim Davis at 800-741-9090.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty. Now, if you were born and bred in Tampa, have you ever wondered how far back your roots go? Have you ever questioned if you're a true native? If you're interested in learning more about the history of the place you call home, you can join the conversation by calling 813-755-6562 or emailing floridamatters@wusf.org.
For a fellow who was born in Tampa, I've lots to learn about cigars, I guess.
You are still young, if you want to learn.
I'd better.
Not much need of a fur trader in Tampa, eh?
Not much, but I'll find something.
Well, that's a bit of a taste of the past from the 1958 film The Flower of Tampa, recovered from the city archives. But a more immersive experience, the Tampa Bay History Center is offering visitors a walk back in time as far as the early 1500s. Their newest exhibit, the Tampa Bay Timeline, travels through the area's history from the lives of the indigenous people of West Central Florida to Florida's statehood in the 1830s and even the founding of the Buccaneers in the 1970s. Well, joining us from the History Center is Rodney Kite-Powell. He's the director of the Touchton Map Library and Florida Center for Cartographic Education at the Tampa Bay History Center. Rodney, thanks for coming back.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
We're also joined by Michelle Hearn, who is the Director of Curatorial Affairs. Michelle, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks
All right.
for having us.
So the exhibit is called the Tampa Bay Timeline. How long has it taken to put this thing together?
It's been about a little over a year-long process. It was a difficult process because we have over 100,000 objects in the permanent collection.
Wow.
And we whittled it down, sifted it down to about 75 carefully chosen items to represent this history.
What are some of those artifacts that stand out?
Well, we have a 1915 whiskey jug from the White Rose Saloon that closed down in 1915 with the passage of the Davis Packaging Law as Prohibition was gaining steam. We have a 1847 surveyor compass that John Jackson used to plat the original 1846 map of Tampa. Sorry, I got those dates backwards. We have a 1911 Tico light bulb from an executive Christmas dinner where they wrote the menu on the side of the light bulb.
Mm-hmm.
So we have that light bulb on the timeline. We have Seminole beads and military buttons from Fort Brooke. It is a wide span. We even have, one of my favorite things is from kind of in the mid-century with the rise of motoring culture.
Mm-hmm.
We have 3 different milometers, which, it gives you, one's for the Columbia Restaurant, one's from the Gandy Bridge, and they kind of give you the distance to other cities and attractions in the state and the United States. So it's quite fun.
I'm just wondering about the process of sifting through all of those artifacts and getting it down to 75. Like, where do you even start?
I don't know where we started. It was quite the process. I mean, when I first began, because I've been here about 15 months. I came down from the State Museum in Tallahassee, so I've been here about 15 months. So I just started literally going through the collection and seeing everything that we had. Mm-hmm. And it's been a great learning experience for me to learn all about Tampa Bay history and also about our collection at the same time. But
okay, so this is kind of like a crash course in Tampa for you as well
absolutely.
As the process of putting this thing together.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Okay, Rodney, if you could paint a visual of what the Tampa Bay timeline looks like, how would you describe it?
Well, it's a timeline, oddly enough, and it's an L-shaped wall case that has a wonderful selection of artifacts. Really carries or provides context for your visit to the History Center, and that was really an important part of the design, was making sure that it connects all the other parts of the gallery spaces that the visitors see.
Mm-hmm.
The History Center itself isn't laid out in a timeline format. We really go about our coverage of history thematically. And so having that context that the timeline provides is really important. So when visitors first go into the space, it's on the top of the stairs or kind of right outside the elevator of our 3rd floor gallery. And kind of one of the first things that visitors see is a large map. We love maps at the History Center.
Sure. As
well as actually a fossil. So you mentioned the timeline going back to the 1500s, but actually it goes back and covers, really the human history of our area, which goes back over 14,000 years. And we have a little bit of natural history that kind of pushes that timeline back a little bit further. Of course, we do get into the meat of it around the time of European arrival. And then in the 1800s with Fort Brooke, as Michelle had mentioned. But as you walk in, you'll kind of go into this kind of large space, and you're really kind of surrounded by this historic display of our area's history.
If you've got some questions about the history of Tampa, back 14,000 years or even earlier perhaps, or maybe more recent history, you can give us a call. Join the conversation, 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562 with Rodney Kite Powell and Michelle Hearn from the Tampa Bay History Center. So, Rodney, in terms of the indigenous communities represented in this exhibit, how do they come through? How do they come across?
Well, again, this is an artifact-based exhibit, although we do have graphics and images. There are no, of course, true images of the original indigenous people that were here because there's no photography. There were some European artists who depicted them, as well as there are a small handful of indigenously created artifacts that have been since discovered. But for the early people, the kind of most clear way that they're represented is through lithic points.
What is a lithic point?
People come and call them arrowheads.
Okay.
But we don't know that they're used for arrows, and so they're lithics, which means they're stone.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're
sharp?
coral, and they are. Well, they say they can be sharp, but they've of course been dulled over the years.
Right.
And they're pointy, which is why they're gold points. But they may have been used for a knife point or a spear and arrow. But that is one of the things that, of course, was left behind by those people. Florida has no naturally occurring metal. And actually very little stone. So most of...
A lot of shells there, right?
A lot of shell, exactly. And then there is flint and coral and things like that they could make things out of. So, but the reality is most of the material that they would have created was organic, and it just does not survive the passage of time. So it's those points that are one of the most enduring representations of them, of having been here. And then, of course, the Seminole people, who are related to those original people of Florida, they're well represented. Again, as Michelle mentioned, there is beadwork, but there's also other information about them. And actually, both groups are covered on the 2nd floor of our gallery. So again, this timeline really stitches together all the different elements of the galleries that you'll see, so you can see the context of it all.
And did you work with the Seminole tribe to kind of create this, or was this just... You have this in the exhibit, in the collection rather, and so it was a question of kind of putting it together rather.
Exactly. We have worked with the Seminole tribe in the past and continue to do so, but they didn't have any particular hand in this exhibit itself. But we have a wonderful collection of 20th century Seminole material culture that Michelle particularly has worked with the tribal members and members of their museum staff, the Tautaki down in Big Cypress, to share information and really share that material with them. Some of those things that they themselves haven't seen before.
When you think, Michelle, about this timeline and kind of how it portrays Tampa, and you were talking about like the whiskey jug sort of illustrating an episode from Prohibition, right? Like there's been some pretty profound shifts in the way people have lived in Tampa. So what sort of sticks out to you? What are some of the events that really stand out, and how are those kind of represented in the timeline?
So we did the normal things like the rise of industry, the development of transportation system, but we also looked at some very important civil events like social movements to kind of push people's liberties forward. And some of the examples are Jose Marti standing on the steps of a factory in Ybor advocating for Cuban independence. We have a beautiful photo donated by Sarah McNamara about the 1930s Women's March, 5,000 people from Ybor to City Hall protesting fascism. We have represented the sit-ins in downtown Tampa to desegregate lunch counters. So we try to include powerful stories of social organization as well as the normal development.
Mm-hmm. And then was there anything that kind of surprised you in the course of sifting through all the material and putting this thing together?
It was, I don't know if I was surprised. I mean, it was such a long journey to get to the end. One of the fun things was at the very end of the timeline, we have a statue of Don Cesar. Mm-hmm. Don Cesar was a fictional character from a Victor Hugo novel from the 1830s, and the original builder of the hotel, Thomas Rowe, in 1928, named it after this kind of swashbuckling character. And I contacted them. I said, hey, you want to be on the timeline? You have something for me? And they sent me this picture of a statue. I was worried it was like a life-size statue, but it's actually 2 foot. It's a 2 foot mantelpiece statue created in the 1890s of Don Cesar, and he's kind of this swashbuckling character, and he has his sword out. And it originally opened in 1928, and they had extensive damage from Hurricanes Helene and Milton, and they had done repairs, and they were able to reopen in 2025. So. We thought that represented like the resilience of Tampa Bay to recover and to continue on in the face of challenges. So
yeah,
that was fun.
And Rodney, it strikes me that it's not the only kind of fictional swashbuckling character with a connection to Tampa, right?
Exactly. Yes. So we have a timestamp, 1904, the creation of You Missed a Groove Gasparilla and the Gasparilla Celebration. We have a really great collection of Gasparilla-related items, and so to represent that, we have a couple of programs from early coronation balls and I believe a dance card. And so, back in the old days when you wanted to dance with a young lady, you'd have to literally write your name in the dance card, and she may or may not pass you by as your name comes up on the card.
That's interesting. I know that figure of speech, but I thought it was just kind of a metaphor for something. I didn't realize it actually had a basis in an actual dance card.
They're actual dance cards, and they even have little pencils attached to them.
Oh,
and
wow.
So, and I guess, if the young lady
seems very
want to
stressful.
Dance, well, I guess for both, for the men and women. But yeah, if you have room on the dance card, as it were, that's where that expression comes from.
Real quick before we close out here, how long is the exhibit going to be up for?
This is a permanent exhibit, which is the wonderful thing. So we actually opened 3 different exhibits in the month of January, 2 temporary, one on the history of guitars and one on the Tampa Bay Downs. But this Tampa Bay Timeline is a permanent part of our permanent gallery on the 3rd floor of the Tampa Bay History Center.
All right, so plenty of time to check it out. So thank you so much for joining us. We've been speaking with Rodney Kite Powell and Michelle Hearn from the Tampa Bay History Center. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, that's our show for today, but coming up tomorrow, are you watching the Super Bowl this weekend? Are you looking forward to Bad Bunny performing at halftime? We'll talk about what the King of Latin Trap's performance at the most watched sports competition in America means for his fans and for the country. Join that conversation at noon tomorrow. Florida Matters executive producer is Grayson Doctor. Our producers are Amelie Horace and Quincy Walters. Engineers are Jackson Harp and Gio Galvin. And Jackson composes our theme music. Natalie Jaron handled the video today. You can subscribe to Florida Matters wherever you get your podcast and watch on WSF's YouTube channel. I'm Matthew Petty. Thanks for listening and watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Let the games begin. This